Gridiron Grinder! Hut hut hike!
All right, it's Thursday night, Gridiron Grinder time. I'm Ryan. With me, as always, is my buddy James. Just a couple dudes hanging out, talking about what's going on in the NFL each week. We are going to be covering the AFC Team Needs with the NFL Draft being a few weeks away. And so tonight we'll start off with Name That Stadium like we always do. Then we'll hit the news from this past week. After that, we'll spend the bulk of the show talking about the team needs for the AFC, and then we'll wrap things up with our question of the week. So, with all that being said, how's it going tonight, James?
It's going good. Fucking hot as balls out, but
How's balls
going
out?
good.
Uh, well, yeah, it's been up and down here. I mean, we just had some snow the other day, but it got like I think into the mid 50s today, so it's kind of rallying back. But the old Michigan weather, man, you just can never count on it.
Yeah, no, I
Little,
know.
little more stable out by you.
Yeah, except for when we get these days that are like 10 degrees, 12 degrees above normal and gets up into the 90s, close to hundreds by the fucking beach. It's like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, well, we'd welcome that, but I get it. It's tough. You're used to having beauty all the time, so.
Yeah.
I was just looking. So this is episode 91, if I'm counting correctly. I know I've missed a few in the past, but so that has us nine away here from hitting triple digits. We might have to figure out what we're going to do for 100, man. Are we going to do kind of like last year? We did a first year recap. Maybe we do like 100th episode, recap on things, or who knows? We got some time to figure it out. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, it depends on where it falls, see where we want to go with it.
Yeah, what's on the calendar for the NFL that week, Yeah, maybe have some tie-in.
Yeah. Or what fucking blockbuster trades happen.
Oh yeah, man, it's been a wild year, dude. It's been exciting. All right, so let's move over to Name That Stadium. And so for anybody who's watching, this is the part of the show where, as you can see, James is out there traveling the country. Every week he's got a different stadium in his background. We're just asking if you think you know what stadium that is. Hit us up in our comments section. First person to get the right answer gets a shout out next week's show. Uh, James had a winner last week. LA Dodger hit us up with the comment. You were out at SoFi, man. So why don't you tell me what kind of inspiration did you have for that?
So it was kind of tying into the Bobby Wagner signing. Like, I mean, I couldn't believe Wagner was free agent for as long as he was.
Yeah,
Apparently, what I was hearing this week was Aaron Donald and what's his name? Why am I
like
drawing a
Jalen
blank?
Ramsey maybe,
Jalen
or
Ramsey. Thank
okay.
you. The only thing I could think of was fucking Jamal Adams was stuck in my head, and I'm like, no, that's not right.
Oh, gotcha.
But yeah, Jalen Ramsey were recruiting his ass for a while. Like they were the first two people to call him when he got cut.
Yeah, I heard that there was like mutual interest for a couple weeks, and it just was kind of a slow roll. But man, it's tough, dude. Like to me, it's a rich get richer thing. I know they lost Von Miller and they lost that one cornerback, but man, it just bringing in Allen Robinson, bringing in Bobby Wagner. I mean, it's sick how they could do that after winning the Super Bowl when you're used to seeing like that mass exodus of players. I mean, I remember when Baltimore won it that one year. It was like half their starters were gone the next season. It just
Well,
it's just like we're not living in reality anymore, man.
if you're talking about what was it like 2002 or
No, I'm
2006 or whatever, like
no, I'm talking
I
about the Ray Lewis one when
uh
Flacco lit it up in that playoff run, and then Ray Lewis retired. It was his last ride or whatever his statement was, and man, it just seemed like everybody was gone after that Super Bowl.
yeah, well they did the same thing after whatever it was. When did they win the Super Bowl? It was I want to say it was '02, but it might have been '06 when they had when it was in Tampa. Who was it? It was Trent Dilfer. was their
Oh yeah,
quarterback, and
yeah.
then
It was like the worst quarterback to win a Super Bowl ever, basically. Yeah, minus the
yeah,
year Peyton Manning won it with the Broncos. I mean, man, he was awful, but it didn't matter.
right, but all Dilfer did was win fucking games, and like the next year, like it was 2000.
Okay.
Anyways, and then the next year they fucking go out and they get rid of Dilfer for Elvis Gerbach.
Yeah, not a wise choice.
Yeah, but I digress. It's just it's now a surprise. It's now kind of becoming the norm that teams keep their players. Like look at what Tampa did
Yeah.
after after the 20 Super Bowl 2020 Super Bowl. What was that? Were we on 56 or 55?
Yeah, they kept all 22 starters. Yep.
Yeah, they kept all 22 starters from that team. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be as good, but it's in the salary cap era, it's kind of impressive that these teams are able to figure shit like that out.
Yeah, and I mean, we talk about it a lot with like the way that teams can manipulate the cap, and it just makes you wonder. It's like, what's the point of the salary cap anymore if you can play those kinds of games and stack it up like that? And, I mean, I know that, like hypothetically, it comes back to get you later on. It's like you're basically borrowing from the future. But it seems like the reality is that there's so many ways to get around it that it never matters. I mean, we saw it with the Saints this year. They went into the offseason 70 plus million over the cap.
Gee,
And
yeah.
somehow they freaking figured it out. And yeah, they lost a couple guys, but for the most part, they still got a fucking stacked roster, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. And the Saints seem to do that every year. That's why going in the offseason we started talking about like going into like what was it when we were talking about the franchise tag candidates, and we were talking about salary space available, and it's like every year we're like, oh, the Saints are 700 million over the cap this year, and then all of a sudden come league year they're under the cap. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah. And it always seems like it's without as drastic of a series of moves. It's like we're
Hmm.
expecting them to have to like gut the roster and make all these moves, and then it's like, oh no, they just re-signed. They signed this guy to an extension and put 50 fucking voidable years and redid it with this guy and that guy and bing bang boom, and we let this one guy go and all of a sudden we're good.
Yeah, exactly. I don't get how they can figure this shit out. Somebody's got to make a lot of fucking money for them.
Yeah, yeah. I
From
mean,
them, sorry.
it just means that we're not living in reality with the salary cap anymore. When you can manipulate it that many ways, there's no point in having it, man.
Yeah,
Um,
that's why like you need to get rid of some of these manipulations. Like
no
if
more
X,
voidable years. Yeah,
yeah, exactly, because these teams. But then again, the players association won't go for it because that will cost the players money.
yep, it's bad for the players. Or I mean, hey, then it's like if that's the issue, maybe you need to boost the salary cap one year where you're like, look, starting next year, instead of it going up by this X amount, we're going to have it go up by like a huge amount, but there's no more avoidable years, and you can only have like X percentage of the contract in a signing bonus, and you can only have X percent in incentives or whatever, so that basically they just can't manipulate the shit out of it anymore. It's like you can do a little bit, but you can't be going crazy where we're just in la la land and make anything work any year.
Yeah, but the problem with that is like yeah they'll boost it that year, and then all these players will get like these huge. They'll
For
manipulate it
that
the other
year.
way where like
Yeah.
for that year like a player will cost like 70 million against the cap, and then the next 4 years only cost a million against the cap. It'll just go the other way.
So then you just build in more rules, James. I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
it's
don't
the
know.
it's the Wild West right now.
But I definitely agree with you. Something needs to be done about it.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, we're just rambling now. Let's kick it over and let's talk about the news from this past week. Um, it seemed kind of like a mostly quiet week to me, And maybe that's just because we had just like fireworks after fireworks the last couple weeks. But, just skimming through it, we'll hit, some of the highlights here. I did see earlier today Brandon Cooks, wide receiver in Houston, signed a 2-year extension with them. I think that was a good move. This is a guy that, I mean, he's bounced around from team to team to team, it seems like his whole career. But they don't have anything else better there, and they need whatever help they can get. So I think it was smart for them to hang on to him. When he's healthy, he's pretty good, but he is one of those guys where, he could have a frickin' 10 catch game followed up by a frickin', you know, 0 catch game, basically, a frickin' goose egg. It just, he's streaky because he's that kind of stuff. He's not like a big possession guy. He's like a smaller, shiftier kind of guy, and when it works, it works, and when it doesn't, it doesn't, man.
Yeah, wasn't he like? I got to look this up, but like, wasn't there like 3 years in a row where he was traded for people? Teams traded for him and gave up first round picks for him.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, it was like I'm trying to remember the sequence of events. It was like New Orleans.
It's like he was New Orleans traded for him from like
The Rams or something, and
no. He was drafted by New Orleans,
okay,
and then he was traded to New England, um, for a first round pick, and then he was traded the next year to oh no, it was a first round pick the next year, and then he played a couple seasons with the Rams, and then it was a second round pick the third time he was traded from the Rams. But it's
yeah,
just like
he's the most drafted guy in the league, man.
yeah, and wasn't he a first round pick also? So
I believe so.
yep, first round, number 20 overall in 2014.
Yeah, pretty wild. Oh man, I'm starting to get a lot of interference here. Hang on 1 second.
Oh shit, I can barely hear you now.
There, try going on mute for a second. Oh, hang on, it's fading.
I'll turn the fan off that I have going.
Okay. Well, that might have been it. It just got better.
Yeah, I like I said, it's warm, and living by the beach, you have no need for AC except for
Oh,
like
yeah.
3 days a year that gets super fucking warm.
So we're gonna sweat you out tonight, is what it's gonna be.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
All right. Well, hang in there, man. Okay. So let's see. Moving on to other news from this past week. I saw a couple other former coaches, assistant coaches, have joined in on the class action lawsuit that Brian Flores got going. Former head coach Steve Wilkes, former assistant coach Ray Horton. And so there's new allegations against the Cardinals, the Titans, and the Texans. So that thing's rolling. Um, I will say this. The positive thing is that the Steelers brought him in and gave him a job. And so that's a good thing. He didn't get blackballed and, potentially make this a more hostile kind of confrontational thing. It's hey, look, you're a good coach. We want to work with you. And while all that's going on in the background, let's get down to business. And so I kind of sort of like, there's two things running in parallel with it.
Yeah, the one that's kind of interesting about it is Horton. What's his first name?
Ray Horton, I believe.
Yeah, Ray Horton. He apparently, when Malarkey was hired as the head coach for Tennessee, he was interviewed by somebody and said that during his interview, he was told he got the job. And that was before anybody else was interviewed for the job.
Okay.
The interview occurred before anybody else was interviewed for the job. So there's a little bit something compelling about that one that really sticks out. The other one, I mean, I don't think there's much to that one. The team fired him. He had an abysmal season. Yeah, they didn't have much players, and but they hired Cliff Kingsbury, and they've had
Oh
somewhat
yeah,
success for it. So it's like for Kingsbury.
yeah.
So who
With
cares?
Wilkes, yeah,
Yeah,
we,
who cares? Who cares if he, given the chance, would have succeeded like Kingsbury did? You didn't do the job when you were there. You
yeah,
drafted
yeah. They had the
fucking
Josh Rosen year, I think.
Josh Rosen, and he sucked. So
Yeah. No, it's tough. I like Steve Wilkes. I was hoping they would give him another year to see what they could do. I just always liked him as a defensive coach. And I think, that could be part of this when you're looking at these three names. These are all defensive guys. And it seems like, I'd have to do some research to back this, but this is just my gut shooting from the hip, is that we're in an era where the offensive minded guys are getting the priority for the head coach jobs.
yeah. So oh, and I'm going to correct myself. The podcast that Malarkey was on wasn't prior to the other coaches. He said it in a recent podcast, referencing the Titans owner told him it was his job
Gotcha. Okay.
before they completed the said the Titans owner told him he was going to get the job before they completed the interview process, including in interviewing two minority candidates. But that one's it's compelling, but it's not, because Malarkey was the interim coach when he was hired. He was promoted from interim to permanent or full time or whatever you want to call it.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah. I'm sure we'll keep bringing this one up periodically as more information comes out. Let's keep moving. Stefan Diggs signed a contract extension in Buffalo, 4-year extension. I saw a couple different figures. One of them was like 90 something million, and then one was like 100 and something million. And so I'm guessing it was like 90 something plus some additional incentives that could get him over 100. Either way, he's been a great frickin' connection with Josh Allen. I never saw that coming, but I didn't see Josh Allen jumping his accuracy up that high.
Well, I
Um,
told you that when that move was made. I loved
I
the
know
move
you did, man. I
when
know
he
you
was
did.
traded for. And what I'm hearing, or what I've heard about it, is like the 125 million is now the value of the remaining life of his contract.
Okay.
So it was a
Yeah,
four
since it
year,
was an extension, yeah.
yeah, it was a 4 year, 104 million, I think is
No,
what I heard.
hey, and I know, dude, you were all over that. I give you all the credit in the world. Is that I was looking at his completion percentage, thinking, man, it's just so low, and he's a running quarterback, big mobile guy, reminded me a lot of Cam Newton in ways, and I was just like, those guys rarely ever turn out to be good passers, and the accuracy thing historically, when they don't have it, you don't really see them improve that substantially. Like I know Kirk Cousins was one of them. Coming out of college, people were questioning his accuracy, and like every year he got better and better and better. And now he's like one of the most efficient quarterbacks. But he's like the exception, not the rule. The one thing I do remember that you called out with Josh Allen was that he had one of the highest drop rates of his receivers that one year that we were looking at it. And that was a great stat that you picked up on, man, because, that definitely could have changed things if he would have had a higher quality group of receivers before they brought in Diggs. Um, and so either way, yeah, you were right. I'm giving you that. Pat you on the back, man. You got it. Okay, so keeping it moving here. Safety, well, former linebacker of the Cowboys, but former safety of the Falcons, Keanu Neal, is signing with the Buccaneers. James, I like this move, man. I know he's getting a little bit long in the tooth, but they've needed some help in the secondary, specifically veteran help, because they've got a lot of young guys in that secondary. And so I think that's a great signing for them. It gives some of these guys sort of like a path of, hey, the old timers telling us this is how you do it and giving us a little bit of the tricks up the sleeve kind of thing. That'll help Antoine Winfield Jr. You got Carlton Davis, who they just re-signed. It's a good move, man. It's a good move. And then they got Sean Murphy Bunting, my homie from Central Michigan. It's good. Solid move in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a solid move. Plus Tampa needed depth in the secondary last year. Like, how many they didn't like? Well, Murphy Bunting missed a good portion of the season. They had other people out season, and their pass defense kind of sucked,
No,
and
that's
it
true.
suffered because of it. So they
They
needed the talented depth.
Yeah, they had a lot of issues last year with people staying healthy. And then, there were analysts talking about the defensive line last year was significantly worse than it was the year prior or the year before. And so that ended up putting more pressure on a secondary that was already having injury issues and other things. And it just was like almost like a perfect storm for that defense last year. And so, um, which I believe they still have to address a lot on the defensive line. I want to say they got, I know Sue's a free agent. I believe Jason Pierre-Paul's a free agent. And what's the guy from Michigan State? Golston is a
Yeah.
free agent. So I mean, man, they got they got some work to do there. But knowing the way that they operate, if they really like those guys, they'll bring them back for next year, I'm sure. So
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they will. Like, they got to find the room, obviously, but because all these signings they keep creeping up closer and closer and closer to the to that limit. But like I said, it's a fake number, so who cares? And yeah, I still have them as needing defensive line.
yeah, definitely. Okay, and so I guess talking about defensive linemen, James, Whitney Merciless
Hmm.
has retired after 10 seasons. Pretty solid career. He's one of those guys where, I think people like us that watch, they know the name. I think people that are maybe not as in depth as we um, aren't very familiar with him. He's kind of one of those guys that's flown under the radar a lot of his career, but he's had some pretty good staying power. He's been a solid guy and good 10-year career, man.
Yeah, I'd seen that. Like, I hadn't really look. I just saw it a few minutes ago that he had retired. So hey, 10 years is I guess that's about par for NFL now.
Oh,
If
I
you can
think,
last for if you can last for 10 years, like, why push it much past that?
yeah, I think if you can make a 10 in the NFL, you're fucking legit, man. All right, so the next one I saw the New York Jets, James, have donated $1 million to the Ukraine relief efforts. And so that's good, man. That's good seeing an NFL team jump in on that, trying to help in some way.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising to me that the Jets were the team that did that, because it seems lately, not to get political, but the the Jets owners,
Oh, Woody
Woody
Johnson?
Woody Johnson, he under the previous administration was the ambassador to the United Kingdom, I believe.
Yep.
So it seems like they lean more that way, and that side of the spectrum kind of was going the other way with a lot of that side of the spectrum was going the other way with the whole Ukraine thing. So I was surprised that it was the Jets that donated it, but good for them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Okay, that's all I had news-wise, man. What else you see that you want to hit on?
I was just glancing, seeing if it was worthwhile. I think that was it.
Okie dokie. Well, let's shift things over and let's do our team needs for the AFC. Like we talked about earlier, the NFL draft is coming up in just a few short weeks. And now's a good time to start looking at these teams, who they could be targeting in the draft. Now that free agency's pretty much settled, pretty much settled. All the big moves have been made. There's still guys out there. There's still signings that are going to happen. But a lot of the fireworks now are going to come from the draft. Is probably the better way of putting it, unless we see a big trade like you're talking about, and that could happen. I mean, we saw The Saints last week had that trade with the Eagles, and so some of that stuff's coming. But yeah, so for tonight, we're going to talk about basically each team, and I'm going to reference, James, an article on ESPN, which is, let me just go back up to the top here, by Jordan Reed and Matt Miller. This was published yesterday. NFL Draft 2022 Team Needs and Prospect Fits, how all 32 rosters can improve from quarterback to edge, rusher, and corner. I want to take this and I want to look at their suggested team needs, and while we're talking, we'll just go back and forth. I'm going to be flipping back, looking at lineups. I love looking at lineups, just kind of seeing who they got and what positions. And we're going to kind of say, yeah, I can see this, or no, maybe this is a higher need, or this or that, or whatever. I'm not really looking to plug any names in yet in terms of who they could be looking at in the draft. I think we'll save that for a couple weeks when we get ready to do our mock draft. But if you got names or whatever you want to throw out there, we can do that. It's pretty much a free flow here. So
Yeah, I probably won't throw names out there because I'm still we talked a little bit earlier. I'm still kind of completing my dive into the draft prospects and where I think they're gonna go.
Definitely.
So I haven't completed the first round. I have, I think, 3 more position groups to go, and then I'll be ready to do my mock for the first round.
Nice. Okay. Well, yeah. So why don't we start it off? We've got the AFC East up first with the Buffalo Bills. These guys are saying the top needs are interior defensive lineman, cornerback, interior offensive line, running back, and wide receiver. And James, I'll say that we started with a tricky one because the Bills are one of the most stacked rosters in the NFL. And so when you go through and you look at lineups and you kind of go top to bottom, it's really hard to find any kind of glaring weakness on this squad, especially now that they brought in Von Miller. You could have argued maybe linebacker was an issue, or edge, if you wanted to say defensive end. Von Miller's kind of living in that edge world where he's like a little bit of both depending on how they're going to play him. And so I think he fills that need. I do agree with the inside defensive lineman thing. Like they talked about in their article here, they've got to replace Harrison Phillips in Starlo Dulele, who he wasn't as big of a factor, but Harrison Phillips was fairly solid. If they could get stronger in the middle of that defensive line, that would help. I don't know that running back belongs on the list, James, because we know that Josh Allen is their featured guy. He's the dual threat quarterback runner. We've wanted him to be a little bit more focused on running the ball these past couple of years, and they're just not going to do it. And so if you're not going to commit to it, you don't need to invest big in it. I think Singletary and Moss, they can get it done. Plus, Singletary did start kind of picking it up at the end of last year. But either way, these are guys that aren't going to have a featured role anyhow. So I would put wide receiver above running back if I was going to prioritize these.
Yeah. So when I look at them, I only actually really had them on 2 true needs. I would say they need maybe another wide receiver. Yeah, they have Jamison Crowder and Gabriel Davis and Stephon Diggs, but I think they could use another guy in there because their backups are kind of slouches. Let's be honest.
Yeah, and
Isaiah
I think
McKenzie. So I could see wide receiver and interior defensive line as needs for them. I don't know necessarily. I agree 100% with you. I don't think they need a running back. They have Singletary and Moss, and then they also signed Duke Johnson this offseason. So they seem pretty, for what they want to do at running back, they seem pretty set. I think they need maybe another wide receiver, and I don't think their defensive tackles are much to write home about currently. I think they could use some help there.
Yeah, we're on the same page with that. And, with wide receiver, I think that they're in a prime position where, these past few years, we've seen good wide receivers come out in sort of like the mid rounds of the draft, second, third, fourth round. They're in a good spot where they could take a guy and develop him to be a part of that squad because, Diggs is the number one. Gabriel Davis got really hot at the end of last year, especially in the playoffs. Crowder is sneaky good, even though maybe he's not a long term answer. And that's where you draft a guy and you let him develop, and it doesn't have to necessarily be a premium pick. Maybe you put a premium pick on that interior defensive line, which is the higher priority. I do know that they're calling out cornerback in this article as well. And, Tre'Davious White got hurt last year, but he's going to be back from everything I can tell. Um, I know that they like to run a very deep squad at cornerback, and so I could see them, going out and grabbing a guy. I don't think it's a huge need, but yeah, if one of their top guys got hurt, it'd be a problem fast. But that would be the same for pretty much any team at that position.
Yeah, so the thing with where they're picking, like the last couple of years, like a first round wide receiver came out and just fucking lit it up. You had Devontae, what the hell's his last name? Smith. Was it Devontae Smith or was it the other guy?
Oh,
Whoever.
from the Eagles, Devonta Smith. I
No,
mean,
no, 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 no. The guy that's on Cincinnati.
Jamar Chase.
Jamar Chase. Thank you. I knew it was one of those SEC guys. You had him light it up last year, and then if you look at look at the year before
Justin Jefferson.
Justin Jefferson. I mean, even Brandon Ayuk has a lot of talent there. Hasn't been necessarily utilized, but I mean, he's had 800 yards a season his 2 seasons in the league. So I mean, that's not that bad. It's just right here in the 20s is prime position to pick a wide receiver.
Yeah. Yeah, if they wanted to, I mean, yeah, just this team's about Josh Allen. I do like, them keeping the defense solid because they were one of the best defenses last year too. Even though it fell apart on them against Kansas City in the playoffs, but yeah, I think they're in a good position. They're a stacked roster. They can let the board fall to them and grab the guy who's going to give them the most bang for the buck.
It didn't fall apart for them in the playoffs against Kansas City. The problem against Kansas City in the playoffs last year was, number one, 13 seconds left. You don't fucking you do a squib kick. Number two, with 13 seconds left, and I believe Kansas City had 1 or 2 timeouts remaining. They had one. That with 1 timeout, you don't worry about fucking guarding the sidelines.
Yeah.
You just like you put a bunch of people back and put like 2 linemen on rush, like triple team Tyreek Hill and force them to beat you that way. Yeah, Patrick Mahomes might run for a bunch of yards, but shit, and then in overtime the coaches forgot how to coach defense, and it was horrible defensive scheme in overtime. I 100% blame that loss on the coaches, not the players.
Yeah, and I'm good with that. Whatever way it is, yeah, that's fine. I don't need you beating me up tonight, James. All right, so let's move on over to the Dolphins, and this one should be a little bit easier to pick apart when we go and we compare this list to what lineups has for these guys. And I'm just getting my page to load here. But they're showing on ESPN center, offensive tackle, edge, linebacker, running back. And, with them signing Teron Armstead, we know they don't need a left tackle, but do they need a right tackle? Potentially. Miami's had a bad offensive line for a while. Center, yeah, that could be, addressed. I don't know that running back needs to be on here because they brought in Edmonds and Mostert, and Mostert especially is familiar with McDaniels, their new head coach. Um, so and that's the last need that they have listed, so I don't need to pick it apart too much. But looking at edge and linebacker and just whatever else, I mean, what are you thinking here, James?
So I some articles I see even threw in wide receivers the need for them, and these are articles after that were written after the fucking Tyreek Hill trade. So
Yeah, so some of it's just garbage.
some of it's just garbage. That's what I was going to go with it. But when you look at I think I agree. I think they need a right tackle. I don't think Austin Jackson is the answer there. Center definitely. Running back, I don't remember the terms of the Edmonds and Mostert deal, if it was multiple years or what. I think, yeah, maybe throw in a running back, even though they got Edmonds and Mostert. Um, Let me get back to the page.
Yeah,
Edge.
I'm looking at edge. I know they got Agba. He's solid. Maybe they need somebody to complement him. I don't know. I mean, I like Miami's defense, man. They've got players at every level, especially in the secondary.
Yeah, I agree. So I don't see the need for edge slash linebacker. Like, I don't really see that. I think their defense is solid. Like, they just need some pieces in offense. They need to be able to protect
Yeah.
Tua, and that's it.
Yeah,
So
and
I
I
would
think
say,
that's, you know what, James, actually, because you dropped to his name, I could see them investing in a running back better than the guys that they brought in, trying to get but I don't know. I don't know who's really that solid coming out this year. I guess we'll find out more in a couple weeks as we get there. But yeah, they're giving him the weapons. You could also give him relief by bringing in a workhorse running back, and that would help take a pressure off of him. I am thinking that the offensive line is the way to go. That's their top need. You got to keep him protected first and foremost. Armstead was a good start. They did bring in Connor Williams, but yeah, if you go after and get a solid center and another tackle, that'd be great for that offensive line. And I know they brought in Eisenberg from Notre Dame in the draft last year, and they've got some younger guys developing, like you mentioned. What's his face? Um, but yeah, just keep throwing some resources at it because this is all about make or break for Tua, I think, this year. And you want to give him his best chance.
yeah, and I'm looking at the draft order, and like, I seriously don't think Miami has a draft until their compensatory pick in the third round.
Oh, well, that's going to change a lot of things for them.
Yeah, round one. Let me see. Miami traded their first round. Well, it was San Francisco's. That's round two. Never mind. Round one. Miami's first round pick goes to Philadelphia for that's a Miami traded its first round selection as well as 2021 first round and fourth round selection for Philadelphia's first and fifth round selection last year. What? Well, that makes no sense. And then San Francisco had traded their first round to Miami, but Miami sent it to Kansas City, and Miami's second round pick goes to Kansas City. Miami's third round pick goes
It's hard to follow, man.
goes to the Giants. Like, Miami has like no picks in this draft. Miami's fourth round pick goes to Kansas City. Like, seriously, like,
So let's just say whatever they
their
can
fifth
get.
round pick goes to New England.
Yeah. So it's going to make
I
it
think,
tough for them to get better from the draft.
yeah, the only pick I think they have is the compensatory pick. Oh no, I think they have their own 6th round pick.
Okay.
Nope, they traded that to Baltimore,
Holy shit.
and their 7th round pick was traded to Carolina. Like seriously, like, do they have
They gave
one
it all
pick?
away, man. So yeah, if that's the case, I would say their best bet is to go after an interior offensive lineman because if you're smart and you do your homework, you can find those guys at any different spot in the draft. And yep, if it's later in the draft, you might need that guy to have time to develop. But that's like the safest way to go, and it fits a need.
Yeah, so they have 4 picks in this draft: 2 7th round picks, a 3rd round, which is a compensatory pick, and a 4th round pick.
Okay.
And those were acquired during trade because their regular
Yeah.
pick was
They've done a lot of moving.
yeah. So yeah, so they're not going to get much in the draft. They're hard pressed to. They're going to have to figure it out some other way.
Yeah, they won't be in our mock. That's okay. Um, all right, let's move on here. Talk about the Patriots. They're up next. These guys are saying top needs: wide receiver, cornerback, linebacker, interior offensive line, and edge. And James, just from what I know
We
about this
forgot
roster,
about, or was that last week, Devontae Parker?
um, we might not have hit that last week. That's a good point. Yeah, it's worth mentioning that they did make that trade for Devontae Parker. You and I were emailing or texting about it, but it must have been after we did the show because we were
Yeah,
talking about how we felt like it was just a weak trade for Miami, especially to trade in division like that.
yeah. So it's
I think
so
so.
it's the second. So it was Saturday
So here's
that
the
it
thing,
happened.
James. Even with that, I think it helps their wide receiver situation, but I still think the Patriots need a solid number one.
I
The
agree.
the problem is Belichick has not been great at drafting wide receivers.
I agree.
So it's a need. Um, I do, and I agree with all these needs. Cornerback, they let go of J.C. Jackson into free agency. Linebacker, I'm expecting them to bring back Kyle Van Noy on some league veteran minimum if they haven't already. Interior offensive line, they just traded a guy to the Buccaneers, so they got a hole there. Edge, same thing. It's like all of these, I think I agree with. These are all legit. The Patriots, they've actually got a lot more needs than what you would expect to see from the Patriots roster.
So I don't know if I necessarily agree with interior offensive line. Um, I think their offensive line is just fine.
Okay.
Um, I would definitely say wide receiver is a need. I agree with you that Belichick's not very good at drafting wide receivers. Cornerback, I would I would agree there. Cornerback, edge, linebacker, which I mean they lost J.C. Jackson. There's going to be a big drop in production from cornerbacks for them.
Yeah.
So I think they have to target cornerback in the 1st round.
You don't think Malcolm Butler's going to get it done?
No, I don't think Malcolm Butler's going to get it done. Malcolm Butler had his 5 seconds of fame, and then he sucked since then.
I don't know. I like him, but he's struggled. I was just joking. All right, so I'm good with all that, man. All right, moving on here. We got the New York Jets next, and these guys are showing top needs of wide receiver, edge, cornerback, safety, linebacker. James, I think you could say, with exception to quarterback, which is even debatable, but it's just because you got to give Zach Wilson time. And then maybe running back with Michael Carter if you like him and want to give him time. I mean, they need like everything, man.
Hmm. They do. I think what I think on here, like, they need offensive line. Like, they seriously need offensive line. They need to be able to protect Zach Wilson. They've been slowly building the offensive line, so I don't know why offensive line is not on the list. Trying to glance at their
Yeah, they did.
acquisitions, and I don't think they
They
touched.
brought in Lake and Tomlinson was like the big one.
That's right. That's right.
So, and
That's right.
yeah, I mean, I guess if you're looking at this squad, you'd have Connor McGovern, Lake and Tomlinson, Mekhi Becton, and George Fant. It's not like an all-star unit, but I think
Yeah.
it's actually it's a pretty good unit, but there's no depth. And they do have Elijah Vera Tucker. He's going to start somewhere on that line. Um,
Yeah, and the other thing with I don't know if they need safety help. Like, they brought in
yeah, I was just going to ask, could they bring in because
Jordan Whitehead.
okay, yeah, they got Jordan
I
Whitehead.
think they have some. I thought they brought in someone else too.
I'm looking at the list right now. I'm seeing LaMarcus Joyner as their other guy. I don't know. I mean, they let Marcus May go, so that's yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, and I guess you could say they don't
So
need
I
tight
have
end.
their strong safety is Ashton Davis,
Okay.
which I'm drawing a blank on the name, so I'm gonna look up his stats real quick. But let's see, CCSS, three
Oh
forced
yeah.
fumbles, two interceptions. He's in second year. Yeah, third year. 2020. So 2020, 2021. Yeah, so he's going into his third year. He was a third round pick. He's been fairly solid. So in 3 years he's had half a sack, three forced fumbles, one fumble recovery, two interceptions. I don't know how much he played before. I think they're fine at safety. Like,
Yeah, I think and I'm looking at the lineups roster. I think they're going to be okay at quarterback because they got to give him time. Running back, Michael Carter looked pretty good. Tight end, they're pretty good with the moves they made there. Yeah, they could use a top type, a wide receiver one, let's say, but they do have some guys, just not a top dog.
mhm.
Um, Edge, I'm not totally sold on. I think that it's more about linebacker because they do have a lot of guys that they can rotate on that defensive line. Maybe they're just not getting those guys to get home as much as they'd like. But I'm showing basically their defense is the most bare at linebacker. I would make that one of
Mhm.
their top needs.
Yeah, I would make that one of their top needs. I would make that possibly one of their, like, that and wide receiver. I would make their two top needs. Like, do you want Zach Wilson to succeed? You need to give him somebody to throw the ball to.
Yeah, I think if you can find a guy that you believe is going to be a wide receiver one, you got to get him because you got the young quarterback and you got to set him up to succeed.
Yeah, and I mean their draft picks pretty high, so I don't know.
Drake London, maybe.
I
We'll talk about names in a couple weeks. I'm just throwing him out there because I know he's been thrown around at freaking two for the Lions, which I think is insane. But the Lions need a wide receiver one also, and I'm not sure he's going to be the guy, but you never know. I mean, it's I've not done that much digging yet.
so I have Drake London as my number two receiver in the draft.
Who do you have though? Ohio State guy?
Yeah, Garrett Wilson. I
Okay.
have Garrett Wilson one, Drake London two, and then wow. I have 3 Ohio State guys in the top 3, or 2 Ohio State guys in the top 3.
Well, they got a lot of talent, man.
Yeah. So I mean, that's just where I stand. There might be some fluctuation there as I get further into it, but yeah, I have 2 Ohio State. I have, what's his name? Olave, Clave, whatever. I
Oh
didn't go
yeah.
back to it. Olave.
All right. Let's move it on here, James. Let's do next up. We got the AFC North, and we've got the Baltimore Ravens showing as edge, interior defensive line, interior offensive line, wide receiver, and linebacker. I think edge, if they get back Calais Campbell, which it sounds like is just a matter of time, there's mutual interest. Um, Although I don't know, he's saying he wants to go to a contender, and if he doesn't believe Baltimore's a contender anymore, maybe he doesn't want to come back. I don't know, but that could solve a need. Um, a lot of these, I mean, the interior offensive line, they lost Bradley Bozeman, so they kind of have a need there. They're another one of these teams that doesn't really have a wide receiver one. They've been hoping Hollywood Brown would be that guy. He's not really stepped up. Um, I think a lot of these are pretty fair needs, man, to be honest. They definitely don't need tight end, I'll tell you that. But yeah, could they get help on the offensive line? Yep, that could work. I don't think they need a ton, but if they got a guy, that'd be good. Interior defensive line, I'm showing Michael Pierce. He's pretty rock solid. So, you know, yeah, get another guy to go with him because they lost, what was it, Brandon Williams? Is he not on the squad anymore? He must be. He must be a
No.
free agent, man. So they need a run stuffer.
So I think they also need cornerback,
Yeah, I'm
and they're
not
also.
seeing as much at linebacker, but yeah, at cornerback.
I
So I'm.
think I think probably D line and cornerback. They also need a quarterback because Sean Watson's going to demand a trade. But
Uh,
Lamar
yeah,
Jackson.
yeah. There you go. Sorry, I was looking at the. I knew what you meant, but the name, yeah. All right, yeah. No, I could see. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think the defensive line is where they should focus. I think they're pretty good at linebacker. They got a lot of guys that can kind of move around. Edge, that's kind of what I mean with the defensive line. It's you got to get somebody who's going to get to the passer. So,
Hmm.
however you want to accomplish that. Always good to build the trenches. So getting that interior offensive lineman, I'm good with that. Wide receiver, I'm good with that if you think you could get a one. Otherwise, don't waste your time because you got a bunch of twos. Um, yeah, and then cornerback. So I'm showing that they still got Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters, and so it'd be good to start grooming a guy behind them for sure because I think it was Marcus Peters was hurt last year, and so either way,
Yeah,
that
it was Marcus Peters was hurt last year,
yeah.
and they also they lost the guy that filled in oh, Averett.
Okay, Anthony Averett.
Yeah. So, but then I think they addressed what I saw was the weakness of safety by getting Marcus Williams.
Yep, yeah, that was a solid signing. Okay, let's move it on to the Cincinnati Bengals. And I'm actually interested to see how lineups has adjusted their squad now that they were in the Super Bowl because man, they had a super low team rating going into the Super Bowl. So they're good at quarterback, we know that. They're good at running back as long as Mixon doesn't have those migraine issues. Wide receiver, they're arguably the best team in the league at wide receiver. Tight end, I think they could use some help. They've got Hayden Hurst. He's not he's not a top dog. He's
Hay-
serviceable if you
Hayden
need
Hurst
him.
isn't a pass catching tight end. He's a blocking tight end. Let's call it what it is.
Okay. So offensive linemen, um, they did make some moves in free agency, so that helps. I would still just keep throwing, keep investing in the offensive line. And then defense, I don't know, man. I mean, the defense played really good last year, way better than I was expecting. It kind of looks like they need some help on the interior defensive line. Hey, oh, here, I guess let me go back to the ESPN article. They're saying cornerback, tight end, interior defensive line, offensive tackle, and safety.
I
I
don't know what they were
agree.
smoking saying offensive tackle, but that's okay.
All right. Well, who do they got at tackle? They got Jonah Williams on the one side and La'el Collins on the other side.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah, they're fine. They're fine at tackle.
I think offensive line, the only thing they might need is like a right guard because they got Alex Capa as their left guard. I think they need to address the right side of the line maybe a little bit. And interior defensive line, I would agree with. Tight
Yeah.
end, I definitely would agree with. Cornerback, I think I would agree with cornerback too because I don't think I have to give me 1 second. Let me make sure, but who they have at cornerback. But I thought their secondary was kind of a little bit on the weaker side last year.
Yeah, so Chidobe Awuzie, Mike Hilton, Eli Apple. I think Awuzie and Hilton were pretty solid. Eli Apple kind of got exposed here and there. I think overall it was a pretty good group, but it would help to have maybe a little bit more depth.
Yeah.
They're solid at safety, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, because then they signed
They kept Jesse Bates.
Michael Thomas was the safety they signed.
Okay. Yeah, no, they're good there, and they got Von Bell. They're good at safety. I think you could knock that one off the list, but I like a lot of these other ones. I think interior defensive line's good. Offensive lineman, maybe not tackle like you said. Tight end, and then cornerback. These are legit. They're a good team. They were obviously a surprise team, but I think it's about depth now for them.
Yeah, it's about depth. I would agree. One of the things I don't. I think it's going to be so hard for them to repeat what they did last
Yeah,
year and go to the Super Bowl, especially seeing as though where I have it now, I have 12 teams in the AFC that could legitimately make a case for not 12 teams. I have 6 teams that could legitimately make a case for they'll be playing on Championship Sunday. I have 12 teams that legitimately could make a case for making the playoffs in the AFC. So, like, I mean, the AFC is just fucking loaded as fuck.
yeah. No, I mean it's just not even fair how good the AFC is right now. It just blows my mind. Okay, so moving on, we got the Cleveland Browns next. And these guys are saying wide receiver, interior defensive lineman, edge, linebacker, and interior offensive lineman. I'm not like so crazy that they need a wide receiver after they made that Amari Cooper trade. I know that they don't have like some studs behind him, but some of these guys showed some potential. Donovan Peoples-Jones, he made some plays. I don't know. All I'm saying is, yeah, you could do it. I don't know if it's their top need. Um, Interior defensive line, yeah, I think they need help there.
Yeah, I agree with that. And they don't have their first round pick, so they're looking at the earliest a second round pick.
Yep.
Um, if they even have, yeah, they do have a second round pick. So yeah, because they traded their first round pick to Houston. I do not remember that deal at all.
Well, for the Deshaun Watson trade?
Oh, duh.
No,
I, I
too many things have happened, James. Too many things
yeah,
have happened.
so
It
much
still
fucking
seems
movement.
unreal that he's on the Browns, but
Yeah,
no,
that's right. Okay, thank you. I was just like, I don't remember that deal, and then so I looked at it and I was reading it. It's like, oh yeah, that's right.
yeah, I mean, when I'm looking at this squad, I think one of their bigger needs is at linebacker. I think if you could get, because they got Miles Garrett, I don't know that edge is such a huge priority. Maybe you get that interior defensive lineman to help strengthen the defensive line. You look at linebacker, and then their interior offensive line. I'm not sold that they really got a need there either. I think that some of these are, yeah, it'd be great to have some depth at those positions, but I'd go interior defensive line and linebacker as the top priorities. Maybe you could say wide receiver because you got Watson now and you want to make the most of it, but I'm not worried about it because they have a wide receiver one in Amari Cooper. That's a
But
lot
that's
more than a
all they
lot.
have. That's
But
all they have is wide receiver one. Their next wide receivers, the
but
three other wide receivers
who
on
would
the
you?
roster are Donovan Peoples-Jones, Anthony Schwartz, and
Sure, but
Jakeem Grant.
all I'm saying is when you're talking about teams like we did earlier, we mentioned the Lions and the Jets and all these fucking teams that don't even have a wide receiver one. What would you rather have? A group of twos or a one, and then whoever else can rise to the top behind him?
I'm not. I'm not. Not. I am not disagreeing with you on. They're better off than a lot of teams. But if all you have is a wide receiver one, all you have to do is double team that guy, and there goes your passing game.
Well, then Watson better fucking run the ball. No, hey, I got you. I got you. So yeah, bump it up higher on the list. That's cool with me. Good there?
Good there.
All right, let's move on to the Pittsburgh. It's getting hostile, James. It's getting hostile. Let's move on to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay, so interior offensive line, offensive tackle, quarterback, and safety. Um, yeah, I'm just gonna say quarterback. Oh fuck yeah, man. All the stuff they're doing at. I mean, I don't know. Maybe Trubisky will surprise us. He could. I don't. I don't believe Mason Rudolph's the answer. I don't believe Dwayne Haskins is the answer.
No, definitely not. Um, so I think offensive line, offensive line, offensive line, offensive line. I don't think they need to draft a quarterback this year. I think I don't know, something about how Dayball was going after Mitchell Trubisky tells me a lot. I think if you have an offensive line that can block, you have Najee Harris at running back. Mitchell Trubisky doesn't have to do that much at the quarterback position to win games. And he's gonna be helped out. Just run fucking play action. They I think who do they have at receiver? I think the receiver might be still a need for them.
Yeah, they need a little bit of help at receiver. They got Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, and Steven Sims. Claypool's had some flashes. Johnson's had some flashes, but this is another one of these groups where it's really kind of like a collection of twos at best. There's not really a number one guy on the squad right now.
Yeah, and they have Anthony Miller. Who?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean
Uh-huh.
he's formerly of the Bears. He was like a 2/3 for them at best.
Yeah, and they have Anthony Miller listed as their number two on their depth chart as their number two receiver. And again, I was like, who?
Hmm.
I mean, so he was on the team last year. And he played in 3 total games last year. Before that, I don't know. He showed a little bit with the Bears and in the lean years where the Bears.
He showed potential with the Bears, but he's not a one. He's not really even maybe a two. I think on this squad he's their clear cut number three, but their one and two are really a two and a two. So they don't have that number one, which is going to make it hard for any of these quarterbacks. But I think that also goes more to what you're saying. Beef up that offensive line, let Najee Harris be the focal point, and that at least gives you a chance to stay in games, and you can figure out the quarterback thing later if Trubisky doesn't rise to the occasion.
But
And then I think they need help at cornerback. I think that's a big need for them right now, which we knew was going to be a risk for them last year when they had three guys leave in free agency. Um, this is a squad, they've got some guys, but like Joe Hayden, I don't know. Did Joe Hayden retire? I'd have to see what happened with him. I didn't think he was coming back, but either way, even if he's back, it's him, Cam Sutton, Akello Witherspoon, Levi Wallace. They got to get some help at cornerback.
so what's interesting here is with Anthony Miller, and I'm not saying that this means anything at all, but Anthony Miller's best years in Chicago were 2019, 2020,
Trubisky
when Mitchell
years.
Trubisky was there. So there's chemistry already there with Trubisky. That's why I think they're putting him at number 2.
Okay.
And I think actually you are right. Joe Hayden, I believe, retired.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking of Malcolm Jenkins. I know he did.
Just glancing real quick. Yeah, so I think you're thinking Malcolm Jenkins because
Yeah.
the last time Joe Hayden, no, he did play in 2021. I don't know. I'm not seeing anything about it, but I thought he retired. But
That's all right.
so he is a free agent.
Yeah. Either way, they need help in that secondary.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so let's kick it over to the AFC South, James, and we're going to start it off with the Houston Texans. This is one of those squads where maybe more than anybody, they need a little bit of everything. And so, you can start where you want. I think Davis Mills, we've talked about it. I think he, as the year went on, showed enough that you could give him another chance to start at quarterback this year. And that would be an amazing success story if he pans out. And so I wouldn't put quarterback high up on the list just yet.
I wouldn't put quarterback on the list at all. I think Davis Mills is solid. I think if you drop Davis Mills into this draft, there's a high chance he would be the first quarterback taken off the board.
I agree. And so, yeah. So these guys are saying wide receiver, running back, defensive end, right tackle, and cornerback. If we just go down the list at running back, they did make that move for Marlon Mack. I like that move. I just wonder, what does he have in the tank at this point, because he's kind of been on the shelf for a while. Before he got hurt and then got buried on the Colts depth chart, he showed a ton of potential. So I'm intrigued by it. But, maybe they have a need at running back, because other than him, they got Royce Freeman and Rex Burkhead. They're not exactly lighting the world on fire.
Oh, and don't forget about Dare
Dari
Ogunbo.
Angumbale, or whatever his name is.
Yeah, don't
Um,
forget about him.
I'm not naming them all, James. I'm not naming them all. But
I was just fucking with you.
yeah, at wide receiver, they're lukewarm. They could use some help there. I mean, Brandon Cooks is their top guy, and then the rest is just a bunch of basically contributing guys. You got Philip Dorsett, Deshaun Hamilton, Chris Conley. These guys, they're not lighting the world on fire. So yeah, they could use help at wide receiver. I see that. Tight end, I could see them putting tight end on the list. Um, and tight end's one of those ones where when you got a young quarterback, a good tight end can make a lot of difference. And so I would put tight end on that list. Offensive line, they're showing right tackle. I think they need more than that. I think they need some interior offensive line help. But yeah, right tackle, that's fine too.
Their only good offensive lineman is Laramie Tunsil. Everyone else on that offensive line sucks.
Yeah, so I mean, Lineups has a 76 rating on AJ Can, and they got a 74 on Titus Howard. But either way, I'm with you. Get some offensive linemen. Get one or two at a minimum.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, on defense, they're showing defensive end and cornerback. They definitely need a defensive end. We know J.J. Watt's gone; he's not coming back. Man, they need a lot on defense, James. Man, I mean, they need it everywhere. They need linebacker. They need it all.
Basically, the only position that Houston does not need right now, quarterback and left tackle. Every other position on this, they can fucking replace and probably be better off. I mean, we talked about it. Brandon Cooks isn't necessarily that number one guy that everyone expects him to be. They have nobody else. They don't have their number one tight end is Brevin Jordan, whoever the fuck that is.
He's got potential, but he's not. They could do better.
Yeah, they have no talent on defense except for maybe Christian Kirksey.
Yep. Yeah, they need a lot of help. So they're easy. Just you name it, they got it.
They have a good kicker though. They have a good kicker. They have a decent punter. I mean, he got a lot of work last year because they suck, but Kaimi Fairbairn is a solid kicker. So they don't need a place kicker either.
All right. Next up, we got the Colts, and we're showing top needs of left tackle, wide receiver, cornerback, tight end, defensive end. I like they brought in Matt Ryan, and yeah, you got to keep him protected. So I think left tackle is that's important. We talked last week about, hey man, go out and get Dwayne Brown. Do something. And there are some guys that they could get there. So I think they got time to figure that out. Wide receiver, yeah, I would like to see them do something there. I like Michael Pittman, and I'm thinking he is moving into that wide receiver one realm, but I think they need to put some guys behind him on that depth chart. I'm not seeing enough other than him at wide receiver. Running back, they're good. We don't need to worry about running back. Tight end, I think, yeah, you got Mo Alley Cox. He had some good games. I don't think they're desperate at tight end, but they could use some help at tight end. The offensive line is pretty much stacked except left tackle. On the defensive line, so they have guys on the defensive line, but they need someone else that can get to the quarterback. So defensive end, I agree with that.
Yeah. The problem with the Colts this year going into the draft?
What's that?
They don't have their first round pick. You know why they don't have their first round pick?
Oh, the Carson Wentz deal.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the Colts don't have a fucking first round pick this year, and they need a first round pick. They have 1 second round pick. So now they didn't even get a full second round pick for Carson Wentz. They swapped picks with Washington, and Washington still got Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I like the Colts roster. I think that it's in pretty good shape, but they do got to fill a couple of these holes.
So, but what I was saying with that is right where they're drafting, or where they would have been drafting if they hadn't made the Carson Wentz trade, is around 16. So you have some good offensive linemen that would be right around there. You have some good that's right about right for some of the wide receivers in this draft. It's right about right for, I mean, it's just
Yeah, they could
They're
have nailed a starter right out of the gate if they had that pick.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not tight end or cornerback at was it 16 or whatever the pick was. Yep, 16. So maybe not corner, tight end, defensive end, but I mean, you could have gotten a left tackle or a wide receiver there, and I think left tackle and wide receiver would be their top two needs.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think their defense is pretty good. Um, yeah, it's just about getting those complementary pieces on offense because they can't just run the ball 35 times a game.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so next up, James, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars. Top needs defensive end, wide receiver, defensive tackle, safety, and linebacker. So it's interesting. They got wide receiver and then all defense. Um,
I
Trevor
think maybe
Lawrence.
tight end. I would throw tight end in there. I don't trust Evan Ingram.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, there was talk about Evan Ingram playing slot too. So I mean, I don't know what their plan is there, but yeah, I think they're good at quarterback, obviously with Trevor Lawrence. At running back, I like their combination of James Robinson and Travis Etienne. I think they're good there. Wide receiver, they definitely need help because
See, I think they still plan on using ETN in the slot, not as a running back.
okay, you don't think that was just an Urban Meyer being an idiot kind of
I
thing?
don't think that was an Urban Meyer being an idiot type of thing. Plus, I mean, they went out and they signed Christian Kirk. They have Marvin Jones. I'm really high on Zay Jones. I think Laviska Shenault, he showed some flashes last year.
Yeah.
So I think at wide receiver they're pretty well set. I think tight end. Never mind, they have Cam Johnson at left tackle. Did I say left tackle for them earlier, or was that no? That was Indy that
No.
needed a left tackle. Okay, thank God. I was like, I was
I
just looking at it. I was like, hopefully I did not say this.
this is but here's the thing with the wide receivers. It's another one of these deals where you've got this collection of number twos. Is that Marvin Jones is not a number one. Christian Kirk's not a number one, even though they're basically paying him that way now. I like Zay Jones as a contributor. I like Laviska Shenault as a contributor. I actually was hopeful that Laviska Shenault would have grown into being a number one, and maybe he could, and he just hasn't had a quarterback to help him develop. But um, that's my only knock is that they don't have a number one, and it's going to be hard for them to get a number one unless they're using a higher draft pick. And they're not going to use the number one overall pick on a wide receiver. Maybe they use that first pick of the second round and hope they can get a one. But with this collection of wide receivers, I'm not sure that they're going to draft one, at least not high.
So that's an interesting thought. Drafting a wide receiver as whatever number 33 overall pick. Just want to glance at something.
Yeah, they did bring in Brandon Scherf at guard. They got Cam Robinson at left tackle. Juwan Taylor looks like right tackle. They could use another offensive lineman, in my opinion. Um, but they're not doing bad.
Oh, you're gonna hate like if I were to mock out where I think the receivers are gonna go, you're gonna hate the receiver that I think would be there at number 33,
Why is that?
the top one. Because I'm gonna say that he went to Western.
Oh, what's his name? Sky something?
Yeah, Sky Moore.
Okay, well, hey, that's fine. I mean,
It's like
I'm a Chippewa, but I've got a lot of love for those MAC players, man.
I have to do some work. Like, it'd be either Sky Jones or Pickens,
Okay,
but Pickens is coming back from a torn ACL, so that's why I have Sky Jones above Pickens.
gotcha. Yeah, and I'm just looking at defense. I mean, they got Josh Allen. Aside from him, they need help all over on defense.
Hmm. No, I agree. I think this draft for Jacksonville is it's going to primarily they have to focus on the defensive side of the ball. I
Yeah.
understand your point about needing a number one wide receiver, but I mean they're almost devoid of talent on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
Um, like Chase, uh, Chase on showed some promise at linebacker. They have Josh Allen, so their Sam and their Will are possibly good. Uh, the
Which
Shaquille Griffin I like, but outside of that, they need somebody outside on the opposite side of Shaquille Griffin. I
I think they
just
need safety. I think Darius Williams will be that complement at cornerback.
possibly. I haven't
Yeah.
seen him
But
show it yet.
they definitely need help at safety. Man, and honestly, because the defense is so bad, this might sound counterintuitive, but it makes me think they need to put another offensive lineman in the mix even more because if they can focus on ground and pound a little bit and control the clock a little bit better, it can take some pressure off that defense.
That's an interesting theory. I'm not gonna argue with that. I didn't have them necessarily needing offensive line, but
Yeah.
that's the ground and pound. That makes what you're saying makes sense. I don't. I think they have to deal
They
with
just
that.
have to get better on defense.
Yeah,
don't
exactly,
don't get better in different ways. Just get better on defense. That's what you're saying, and I'm good with that. I'm good with that.
exactly.
All right, next up we got the Tennessee Titans, and we're showing needs of offensive line, wide receiver, defensive end, tight end, and center. Um, this is a team that runs through Derrick Henry, and so I do agree with beefing up that offensive line. You want him to have those holes. You want to minimize the risk of him getting injured like he did last year. So I like putting some priority there. Wide receiver, I don't know is that high of a need because they do have A.J. Brown and they made the trade for Robert Woods. Um, Tight end, yeah, they could get help at tight end, but I don't know. I like what the guy's saying. Defensive end, that would that might be their biggest need in my opinion is looking on the defensive side of the ball. Offensive line and then defensive side of the ball is I guess what I would say.
Yeah, I think more specifically they need to figure out a way to replace Saffold and at guard.
Yeah.
It's a big hit to that offensive line because they have an undrafted free agent and probably one of the worst pass blockers in the league, uh, possibly for who's going to take over at guard for them. So that's where I think they need to focus on. They need to do that. They can't go a season without Derrick Henry or with Derrick Henry getting hurt again. And the problem is with Tennessee is they were the number one seed last year, and they've gotten better, but I still don't think they make the play. We'll get more into that later. But right now, I have problems with picking them to win the division currently.
Yeah, in comparison to what everything else happened in the AFC, I know what you mean. Yeah, looking at them on defense, I think they could use help in the secondary. They need help at cornerback. They need help at maybe they're okay at safety, but definitely at cornerback they need some help. They could use some help at linebacker, and they could use some help on that defensive line. The defensive line's not bad. It's just that they're not getting as much pressure on the quarterback as they could.
I agree.
Okay, we're moving over to the AFC West now, James, and we've got the Denver Broncos up first here.
What the fuck? Anyways, go on.
What was that about, my friend?
Oh, that was about. You'll realize it when you read what they think the Denver Broncos need.
Oh, all right. Okay, so Denver Broncos, cornerback, strong safety, linebacker, right tackle, and running back. What's the what the fuck on the running back?
Yeah, why the fuck did they need a running back? They just drafted a running back last year. Javonte Williams is a future star. Like,
Yeah,
I
he's good,
mean,
man. Yeah.
you don't need a running back.
It must just be because they're used to the tag team with Melvin Gordon. I don't know. And everybody has a committee these days. But no, I agree with you. Javonte Williams, he looks like everything you want in a workhorse back. You just got to give him the carries. So
Exactly.
yeah, we know they're good at quarterback. I'm with you on running back. At wide receiver, I think they're pretty solid, honestly. I think they have one of the more underrated wide receiver groups, and part of that is that they didn't have a quarterback that was getting the ball to these guys. But Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, oh my gosh, man, those guys, that's a nice trio. Um, Tight end, yeah, they could use a tight end, but let's be real, Russell Wilson's never really highlighted the tight end in his career. And so I don't think it's that big of a priority. It would be a nice want, but it's not a need. Offensive line, they have gotten better. I mean, it wouldn't hurt to throw a guy in there, to be honest. But I don't think they're desperate on offensive line. Maybe that right tackle pick what they're saying. Maybe that's what they mean. That'd be fine. Defense, okay, so on defense, they got Randy Gregory this year. That was a good pick. You know, it's hard for me to say on the defense because it's a new coach, a new, this defense has been good for a long time. I think what they're saying in this article, they need help at linebacker. I think you can get behind that a little bit. They did re-sign Josie Jewell. I like that, but he's just one guy. And then strong safety and cornerback. I mean, cornerback, I don't think they're desperate at cornerback. They got Patrick Surtain, the second. They still got Darby and they got K'Wan Williams. So they're not
Yeah,
they're
but
not
Darby had a shit year last year. He had one of the worst year. He had a terrible year last year. I think they definitely need a corner back. And they need somebody. They need to either slot or the starter opposite Sertan. Um, I think that's mainly their only need. Like maybe I could throw in a right tackle or a tight end, but like you said, Russell Wilson doesn't throw to the tight end. Maybe the right tackle, like that might be a need, but I think their biggest need is cornerback.
okay. Alrighty. Next up, we got the Kansas City Chiefs, James. And so Tyreek Hill is out. So they got wide receiver up here as a need. They also have cornerback, right tackle, defensive tackle, and crazy for them, they've got running back. I mean, is that like an admission here that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is just not getting it done?
I don't want to talk about it.
You don't want to talk about it. Lineups has an 82 grade on him, which is pretty good, but the production hasn't matched that.
I don't
Um,
want to talk about him.
you don't want to talk about him. All right. So obviously they're good at quarterback. Maybe you put running back. They did bring in Ronald Jones. He's shown that he can be serviceable. Um, I mean, they got Michael Burton at fullback, James. They could upgrade fullback. Maybe that's what Edwards-Helaire needs. I don't know. Wide receiver, yeah. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Juju Smith-Schuster, Mecole Hardman. Those are their top dogs. They need a wide receiver one. I want to see how does Patrick Mahomes perform with this group of wide receivers because we know the great ones can make they can make it work with almost any group of wide receivers. And so let's see if he can do that here. That'll dictate really how big of a need is wide receiver for them. And
I
they
think wide
still,
receiver is a huge need for them. I think they need a home run hitter, like like Tyreek Hill was for them. That opens up so much of that offense, having Tyreek Hill able to stretch the field and that fear that Tyreek Hill is going to stretch the field. I think
So do they need a one or do they need a burner?
they need a burner.
Okay.
And I think the burner by default will end up being their one because of how. And I think they get that's what they go after in the draft. And I actually have them trading up pretty high in the draft so far as what I'm looking at to get that wide receiver. It's what the fuck's his name? The dude from why am I drawing a blank on his name?
I don't know.
Dude from Alabama.
Oh, Jameson Williams.
Yes, thank you.
I give you the assist when I can.
Yeah, Jameson Williams. I think that's yeah. He's coming off a torn ACL, which is why he might drop a little bit in this draft. I think if he wasn't coming off the torn ACL, Jameson Williams would be a top 5 pick in the draft. That's how good I think this guy can be.
Yeah, he did have a heck of a year.
So that's just what I'm seeing there is they're going to go after a wide receiver. They need that wide receiver. I think if they don't have that wide receiver that can stretch the field, and MVS and Juju are not those wide receivers.
So
Juju
yeah,
is,
but then
is clearly a number 2. MVS is clearly not a number 1. I think they get the number 1 that can stretch the field, which opens up everything else underneath. And that as a second. As 1B, they have what the fuck's his name?
Well, they got Kelsey.
Kelsey, thank you. I was trying to think of it. And I'm like, Kittle. No, it's not Kittle. It's the other one. Kittle. No, it's not Kittle. Like I couldn't come up with Kelsey in my head. So I think Kelsey's there. Like you have the guy that can stretch the field and Williams, and you have Kelsey as their 1B, 1A, 1B, and I think they'd be set at wide receiver. I think without that Tyreek Hill type receiver, I think this offense takes 7 steps back, and Kansas City is the 4th best team in their division.
And it might be. All I'm saying is that if that's how it plays out, it would be that $500 million contract that they gave to Mahomes would be pretty ugly if he can't find a way to win without them getting him a stack at wide receiver. But I know what you're saying.
I agree with that. I agree with that. It's just I think for Andy Reid's offense to be successful, they need the wide receiver, and I don't want to talk about running back.
All right. Well, let's look at defense then, James. We'll stay away from the running back thing. It says defensive tackle. I agree. They could get some more help there. They do still have Chris Jones, who's rock solid, but he could have a complement next to him on that line. They have Frank Clark at defensive end still, but they could use more help at defensive end. Nick Bolton had a great year at linebacker for the young guy. I believe he needs help at linebacker. And then cornerback has been basically a need that they've had forever, it seems like. L'Jarius Sneed, he's done okay, but they gotta do something in the secondary. And I guess, so they brought in Justin Reed, it looks like, to replace Tyrann Mathieu. Man, that one, I don't know, dude. I was hoping they would have hung on to Mathieu, but it is what it is.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. I think all those positions are needs, but I think all those are secondary needs to wide receiver.
Okay. Yeah, you're saying, okay, they're going to win through offense, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Maybe all right.
I don't want to
talk
hear you.
About it. I hear you, man. Yeah, we don't have to talk about it. Yeah, I mean, if they just had a better running back, they could just. All right, next up, we got the Las Vegas Raiders, and we're showing team needs a defensive line, linebacker, cornerback, offensive tackle, and running back. And there's a note here, they have no first or second round pick. So um, that's going to make it tricky for them. I guess let's just go through our top to bottom. They got Derek Carr at quarterback. They're going to be okay there. Running back, they got Josh Jacobs and Kenyon Drake. They're happy with that combo. They've got the trade for Devontae Adams, which makes their wide receiver group look fucking amazing. At tight end, they got Darren Waller. He's rock solid. I like this. They brought in Jacob Hollister. That's awesome. I hope he does good there. On the offensive line, so this is saying offensive tackle. They're going to have Colton Miller at left tackle, I'm sure. And lineups is showing with respectable grades. We've got Denzel Good at 75, Alex Leatherwood at 73. Did he play their right tackle last year, or did he play a guard spot? I can't remember.
I
John
think he
Simpson
played
at guard. Okay. Yeah, so I don't know if it's a tackle or a guard, but yeah, they could definitely use at least one guy on the offensive line. So I agree with that. But that's most teams. Most teams could use at least one or two guys on the offensive line. Defensive line, yeah, okay, they got Bill Nichols, Jonathan Hankins, Andrew Billings, Max Crosby, he's their big guy. They just re-signed him. Clellan Ferrell's been a disappointment. Yeah, they need at least one more sort of higher end guy on that defensive line. Whether you want it to be a defensive end or a defensive tackle, either way would work, I think, to give them some improvement. Well, actually, no, because they got Chandler Jones now. They're listing him at linebacker, but I got to believe he's going to play defensive end on that team.
Yeah. So I'm going to say something.
Say it.
The Raiders need to improve the fucking offensive line. Last year, how many times do you think Derek Carr was sacked?
62.
40.
Okay.
He was sacked 40 times. The year before, it was 25. And yeah, there was an extra game last year, but that doesn't account for 15 sacks.
No, that's a lot. So let me ask you this. Is a lot of that the offensive line, or some of that him holding onto the ball too long? Because I heard a lot of shit about him holding onto the ball and not making plays last year. But I don't know. I mean, he had a great year. So the people the people that criticized him, I don't know. It's almost like they can F off. But yeah, just get him protection. I'm with you, man. It's all you got to have a passer. You got to protect your passer, and you got to be able to get to the other team's passer.
I mean, shit. Last year he had 108 rushing yards. So sorry.
Lighten it up, man. Lighten it up. All right. So yeah. So the defensive line, we talked about that. They're actually probably okay with Chandler Jones. Maybe an interior guy, I would change that too. Linebacker, they look okay to me. Maybe you could get like a top like tier guy, but we're showing Denzel Perryman, Jayon Brown, who did really good in Tennessee last year, Kyler Fackrell. That's not a bad trio, man. I'm okay with that. At cornerback, Trayvon Mullen, Rock Yassin, Anthony Averett. It's not bad. Maybe it's more safety is what they need help with.
Yeah, I think it's more safety. They have Jonathan Abram
and Duron Harmon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
And Trayvon Moehrig.
Oh, yeah, he was a first or a second round pick last year, man.
Yeah. I think he was a first rounder last year. So I don't know, maybe strong safety, but I don't, because I think Moehrig's gonna come into that position pretty well.
Yeah, I think that's the plan, is that he'll be the guy there. Okay. All right, so let's see. We got last team for tonight. We got the Los Angeles Chargers, and James, we're showing needs of cornerback, wide receiver, right tackle, defensive tackle, and running back. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say I don't know that wide receiver's really a need unless they're talking about just wanting to be so fucking stacked at wide receiver just because they still got Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Um, and I don't know that running back is a need because Austin Eckler has been solid, man. But
I
um,
I think they need a second. I'm not like I was really big on Joshua Kelly last year
okay.
and or going into last year, and he was just so underwhelming.
So what do you think they need? Is it like a goal line back? Is it just somebody just to complement him in a committee? What do you think it is? Because he can do. Obviously, he's great at catching the ball out of the backfield, but he's also been a pretty good, like, traditional running back when they've used him that way too.
Yeah, I think they need a third down goal line back, running
Okay.
back. I'm not going to put it that high up there. I think a lot of their needs. I think it's idiocy to say they need a wide receiver. Um,
I mean, I'd put tight end over wide receiver.
yeah, but they signed Gerald Everett, who I think has
I
has some.
I agree. And all I'm saying is if you're gonna prioritize one of the pass catching positions,
Yes,
I would
okay.
say I would say go and get a top flight tight end because you already have a one and a two at wide
Hmm.
receiver.
Yeah. So I think defensive line, linebacker are are needs for them. I don't see linebacker on the list. Like if you look back to last year, like they had one of the worst rush defenses in the league.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
didn't somebody like rush for like 7,000 yards in a game against them and set the NFL record?
pretty close. Yeah,
Like seriously, like let's look like it was ridiculous. Their rush defense, and that's what we were saying week in week out. They need to figure out the rush defense. They need to figure out the rush defense. They need to figure out the rush
yeah.
defense.
And they did make that trade for Khalil Mack, but that doesn't. That's more. Yeah, they need somebody that's going to stuff the run and yeah, man, I don't know. Like to me, it's like they need. I like how they put right tackle in here specifically. I think they need a right tackle and then all defense. I think
And
it's that simple.
where's your defensive stats?
I'd go right tackle, defensive tackle, and then whatever else you want on defense.
Uh, so they're rushing. They allowed 4.6 yards per rush last year.
Fuck, that's high.
138.9 yards per game. Their passing was about average in the league, like 221 net passing yards per game allowed, approximately 7.1 per pass attempt. But what the kicker is their yards per pass attempt was higher than their yards allowed per pass attempt, but
Okay.
it was reversed for yards per rush attempt or rushing yards per game. I think actually, you know what? Looking at I don't know, they might need a running back. Last year they only rushed for 108 yards per game.
It's
But Eckler was hurt for a number of games last year though, so
yeah.
that could explain that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, is it because he was hurt or because he was doing more catching the ball out of the back? I don't know. Either way, um, I mean, to me, they're going to be one of these teams that they pass the ball first.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'd go right tackle, defensive tackle, and then whatever else you want to put on defense.
Yeah,
All right, that's all I got, James.
that's
That's all I
about
got.
all I got too.
Okay. Well, let's move it on over and do our question of the week. And you can call it a cop out if you want because we already talked about it. But I'm just going to make it a simple yes or no. Should the league revisit the rules related to the salary cap to try and bring things back to reality. Obviously, I think it's a yes. I think that you think it's a yes, but we'll just keep it simple, yes or no.
Yes, it's a yes. Will it happen? No.
There you go. You want it to be a yes, but the reality is that it'll be a no. Because it's no fun if you've got all these rules and actually make it a truly even playing field, James. All right. Well, for anybody who's watching, feel free to chime in on that. Play our stadium. Name that stadium. I'm already forgetting what we call these parts of the show. Play Name That Stadium. We had a taker last week. Maybe we'll get another one this week. And hit us up in the comments section. Answer our question of the week. Aside from that, we hope you guys liked the show. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. And James, like always, man, it was a good time.
Have a go.
All right, I'll catch you later, man.
Gridiron Grinder. Hut, hut, hike.